Okay, hello again, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Hickman here. What I wanted to do is to really show you guys what this assessment piece, performance task piece looks like in an actual lesson plan. So I want to take us back to the biology lesson plan that we worked on that I showed you guys last week if you watched that video. If you recall, that lesson plan was a little crazy. They had 9 understandings here, as you see, that really weren't understandings. These read more like objections. I mean, observations, but not even that. And then the essential questions. If we noticed in our analysis, they were all recall questions that could have been answered with one word or one sentence. So I wanted us to think about what kind of assessment could have come about from this. And I think you guys, as you answer or think about that question, you won't be surprised that when you see, as you come down here, they want to look at observations and that led to conclude that species evolved, gradualism, and punctuated equilibrium models of evolution. Much of this stuff, I have no idea what it is. The 4 elements in the process of natural selection, all of that is recall. All of that is informational. Very little of that is higher order thinking. Very little of that is actual understandings. So it should come as no surprise as then we get to the stage 2 assessment here. The performance task is a chapter 13 exam. That's not a performance task, ladies and gentlemen, as I'm sure that you guys understand that. And as I mentioned in the last video, what we want to do is get students to think and do their content area and subject matter. So here it is with biology. We're trying to get the students to think and do biology. Those of you who are the future biology teachers, we know that the students are not asked to do or think about biology in this instance. They are being asked to answer questions about biology, but not be biologists. We know that biologists do a number of things. They conduct research, they observe, they collect data, they measure things, they make hypotheses, they conduct experiments, write reports, they record data, they ask questions, solve problems, evaluate scientific claims. Those are all the things that biologists do. And we should see that reflected here in the performance task so that they can really start to work on better understandings than what we have here. So I'm going to go back to the biology critique that I did last week, where I made changes to the goals and the essential questions. And we can talk about how it is the performance tasks that I come up with are a little different. And I think you guys will see exactly how it is that these performance tasks give you a much richer view and a much better understanding and more evidence as it relates to students mastering and developing those understandings that I have here. And you'll see the understandings that I have here. Biological evolution is supported by scientific evidence from many disciplines, including mathematics. Life continues to evolve within a changing environment. Change in the genetic makeup of a population over time is evolution. The use of the scientific method as it applies to the biological process. And scientific study can impact politics, culture, and religion. So what we're going to do is first we're going to talk about, all right, so what's a performance task? Well, first we're going to get rid of this chapter 13 exam because that's just not going to answer or allow students to come to the understandings that I have there in my understanding goals, my big ideas. It's just not going to. So what I've come up with is we're going to have students do a research project. Okay? And in that research project, students are going to observe, they're going to do a research project on an observed natural selection process, if I can type correctly. Such as, and you can give them different ones. You can provide them the list or they can come up with the list. But I want them to do a research problem on different observed natural selection processes, such as a bacteria responding to antibody, the response of HIV to an antiviral drug, the Galapagos finches, those birds, and how they respond to changing environmental conditions. So We can fill in the blank of what natural selection process we want them to work on. But now as a part of that, what we want the students to do, they will conduct research. They will develop a hypothesis about how it is that they feel that natural selection process might move forward. How, for example, the Galapagos finches, how it is that the changing environment has affected them. But then we can also get them to make some predictions about what might be happening going forward. How might the situation change over time? We just received a climate change report. So as climate change continues to happen, sea level rises, might that impact the environment on the Galapagos Islands of the Finches? These are the types of questions we want the students to wrestle with, because then they will really be able to demonstrate their understanding of how life continues to evolve within a changing environment. So can they make predictions as I type in my predictions? Can they make predictions? And then what they can do is they can write a report and present their findings. Now, I want you guys to compare taking the Chapter 13 exam with working in a group, which I didn't mention, but this doesn't matter. They could do it in a group or they can do it individually, on a research project about an observed natural selection process, where you get the students conducting research, where they're coming up, they're hypothesizing, they're making predictions, they write a report, maybe they do an oral presentation about their findings. Compare that to simply taking the test in Chapter 13. Now, that's not to say that the test from Chapter 13 cannot be beneficial. That's where you want to look into your other evidence in that piece, to where you can use quizzes, tests, exams, formative assessment pieces to get more evidence as to whether or not they are grasping and getting the foundational knowledge and can recall those concepts and facts that they need to make these more sophisticated understandings of this particular topic. Hopefully, you guys can see the difference. I think it's pretty stark as far as I can tell. So I want to move on from this one here to one that I didn't show you last week. Last week we did one on Algebra 3, but I wanted to switch gears with this one here because it really hammers home a couple points that I want you guys to take a look at. So this time we're going to be taking a look at African American literature class. And the topic is the book. It's a slave narrative called 12 Years a Slave by Solomon Northup. About 4 or 5 years ago, it was a movie. I think it won Best Picture, if I'm not mistaken, or Best Director. It's a great film. I encourage all of you to see it if you have not. But this African American literature class, they're going to read 12 Years a Slave. Here are the big ideas. This is all about, if you read over the big ideas and the understanding goals, this is a class that really is going to focus on writing, talking about literary elements, text structure, having a robust vocabulary, the focused content, organization of writing, the essential questions. How does interaction with the text provoke thinking and response? What role does writing play in our lives? Those are great essential questions. Those understandings and those big ideas really are skill and process based, but that doesn't mean that they're not valuable, because that they are. So we get the sense here from this page that we're talking about writing, because this is talking about writing. So therefore, we should see in our performance task writing. Now remember, ladies and gentlemen, this is an actual lesson plan that was submitted and followed by an in-service teacher. I didn't make this up. This is something that somebody submitted to their principal and said, this is what I'm going to do come Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week. So let's look at the performance task. Well, first, let me pause. There's the vocabulary. That's quite a list. And even at the bottom, it says others as needed. Let's fix that. But then over here, look at the objectives. My gracious, there's no way that you could cover this just in one book. This is unbelievable. Don't ever turn anything like this in. This is way, way too much. But again, you see all of this. Use a grade appropriate resources to confirm and extend meaning. Write a sharp, distinct focus. Use proper conventions to compose in standard form of English language. Man, I would hope these kids are going to write some serious research papers, some master levels thesis, or anything, if this is the objectives that this teacher wants to have the students meet. So let's go down. All right, stage 2 assessment. Here we go. Performance task. Discuss the roles of various people in race and literature. Discuss history and societal roles in African American literature. So for all of this, the students are going to talk so that the teacher can determine if they understand the writing process. They're not going to write. The performance task isn't going to be them actually writing. It's not even going to be the writing process. They're going to discuss it. Discuss it. And in fact, as we go down here to materials and resources, they're going to have a vocabulary workbook. That's about the most writing that they're going to do. They're going to discuss it. Questions for comprehension, they're going to be also done orally. This doesn't make any sense. This is what I'm talking about when I say that the stage 2 assessments must line up with the desired results. There's none of that in the assessment that is reflected in these desired results. Because I can tell you most likely what has happened here is that whatever's in this box changes. Whatever in these 3 boxes here, in this box, and in this box, probably remains the same for each and every lesson. I guarantee you that, ladies and gentlemen. You come down here, these things, this box here probably stays the same for every unit that the teacher teaches. And this one, this one changes, pardon me. And then this one over here changes as they move to different things. Or, let me back up. What they probably do is they keep all of these the same because this could cover just about anything in a literature class. And this here, these probably change very little. These probably remain the same. I would imagine this is the only thing here that talks about materials and resources, probably about the only thing that changes there. None of this lines up. None of this is connected to one another. So you can imagine that if you go into this classroom, there's probably not a whole lot of cohesion that's going on in the teaching, the pedagogy, and what students are asked to do. Because there's no way that you're gauging whether or not they can do this in terms of writing, in terms of process, reflecting, all of that, if all they're being asked to do is discuss. And we don't even know to what degree that they're even discussing any things. So this is a very, very good example of what it looks like if it's not done properly. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to show you guys these, is because I wanted you to see how not to do things, because learning from mistakes can be a very, very valuable tool. So I've given you guys some models on what not to do and what it not should look like. With the biology one that we just did a little bit ago, I showed you guys how to go about making it different, making it better. So with this one in particular, I really wanted to show you guys what it looks like when these things are not aligned and they're not connected. And again, you can imagine, I know I could imagine, the absolute mess that this class was, but then at the same time, the opportunities that would have been lost for kids to really do some great learning and some great understandings about that novel and the importance of it in the abolitionist movement, and talking about the fortitude that Solomon Northup had to be stolen away from his family for 12 years and to be enslaved and live in a situation where he did not know anything about, is staggering. It's quite a American tale from that particular time period. And there's so much rich, valuable learning that kids could do, and it's not being done here because they're being discussing. And there's so much great writing that they can do, but they're just going to be talking about it. So I'm going to sign off here for this one, ladies and gentlemen. So please hit me up on email if you have any questions, or you can go to the discussion board with it. And hopefully you guys have understood this and got a lot of good information out of it. And I will talk to you soon.